Hi, I thought it would be nice to have a little fireside chat in my room today. Um, this is my sweet little electric fireplace, when I bought this house, it's just one floor, which is a little over 800 square feet, but there is an attic and there is a basement. And so I've had the attic insulated, and right now I'm painting it and finishing up. I've got a bathroom to finish up as well, and then the entire top floor will be a master suite, so I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to sort of continue the saga of us our traveling and thinking we were going to live in Ecuador, and then deciding that probably wasn't the best idea. I did want to say about this fireplace that the way that I found this was it's actually on the older side and a solid wood cabinet. And how I found it was there was a lady who was living in Indiana who was thinking about moving to Ecuador, and she was on one of the expat websites, and she was asking questions and I was answering them. And then when I got back, because I was on her friends list, she was selling things, and I drove about 3 hours to Indiana and picked this up, and it was a dark color, and my room is kind of wood and white, so I painted it white. I don't think she was very happy about that, but I like it, and it gives me the ambiance of a fireplace on cold days like today. We had a big snow yesterday overnight, 4 inches. And so the heating isn't great up here in this attic room, so it's nice to have this little fireplace to turn on and put on heat and kind of have that feel of being a fireplace. Okay, so back to Ecuador. So we're in Ecuador, and we've been living down by the ocean in Salinas for 6 or 7 months. And my daughter came to me and she said, and we had thought we were going to stay in Ecuador long term, but there was a couple of problems with that. Number one, the rules had changed, and the new president of Ecuador, just about the time we arrived, decided that before, if an American had a pension over a certain amount, I think it was like $800, then for every additional 100, they could bring a family member with them. So on that basis, we thought that we could move down there. Well, that got thrown out of the water about the time we arrived. The old President Correa liked having the Americans down there because I'm sure we spent a lot of money and helped the country. On the other hand, the Americans were also taxing the medical system, and there was a government program called IESS, and it was only about $80 a month, but it was failing fast, and the Americans were really coming back down and being very sick, and were really overtaxing it. So that a friend of mine who still lives in Otavalo was just posted today or yesterday that system is pretty much dead, and so all those Americans that moved down there for that don't really have any options, and there are still lots of Americans down there. But my grandson, coming back to the time that we decided to come back, we didn't know anything about that at the time, but he decided he wanted to come back to the States. He is not the world traveler. He just by nature is very quiet, and he really didn't want to be traveling around the country and doing all those things. And I had begun to realize that for me to ship all my things down there was going to cost about $10,000, and it was a huge hassle. I have to go and itemize everything, and that would could have been a huge debacle. I can just see having to pay so much money to customs inspectors to look the other way about something that you didn't have on the list. And I just started thinking that was probably not a very good idea. So my grandson wanted to come home, and I thought that was a good idea, and it didn't look like I could stay. I had a residence visa by that point, but my daughter and grandson did not have any pathway. We tried to find another way, and they just didn't have that. So that was a big factor. So we decided to come back, and now we have, I had signed a 1-year lease on this house, and there were just a lot of complications coming back. However, we decided to get on, my daughter got on the internet and started looking for houses, and I contacted a mortgage broker up in the States and got qualified for a mortgage. And the funny thing was that he didn't actually, I told him that I was in Ecuador, but it just didn't register. So that was a funny thing just before I got here, there was some problems. But on the whole, everything just went so smoothly. Unlike when we came down, everything seemed to be a problem, and on deciding to go back, everything became much easier, which is a good indication that you're supposed to go do something, right? It's all the path was made clear. So there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong with that, and one was that I'd signed a 1-year lease, and I would essentially be breaking it, and in which case my $2,000 deposit, which is hard to get back in Ecuador in any event, I would have to just give up, because I wouldn't even be able to tell the landlady we were leaving, because that would have just caused a whole nother kerfuffle. And so a month before we were supposed to leave, I'm contacted by the man who had lived in the house before, who had moved out because he was moving in with his girlfriend, and he is an Ecuadorian American. His dad was Ecuadorian, his mom was American. He was born and they lived in Ecuador until I was like 3 or 4, and then his mom left his dad, and his mom went back to the United States. And so he grew up in the States, but spoke English and Spanish perfectly. And so he called and said, "Hey, are there any houses for sale in the neighborhood?" Now, we lived in a neighborhood that was about 2 blocks square, and it was guarded and gated, and there were, I'm not kidding, 18-foot fences around this. And so he said, "Hey, is there anything for rent?" And I said, "Well, there was. I'll have to go look and see if it still is." But I said, "How would you like to rent this house again?" And he said, "What? Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No, actually, we want to go back. So if you want to rent this place, you can." And he was thrilled, and he said, "Oh, that's great, and no problem. I'll talk to the landlady." Her name was Señorita Violeta. She was an older lady, and I think she never got married. I think she was a nun for quite a while, and obviously came from a wealthy family that she had the money to buy a house to rent to somebody else. And I had only way I had to get a hold of Señorita Violeta was via email, and it wasn't email to her, but to this other lady who Señorita Violeta had designated as her contact person. So just at the 30-day mark, this man, Juan, called me and said, "Yes, I would like to take the house back." I said, "Great." And he said, "I will give you your deposit back, and I'll move in and you can move out." And I said, "Super." And so I wrote a letter in Spanish, which I wrote in English and then translated it and sent that to Señorita Violeta on that day, 30 days prior to when we were leaving, and told her that we were leaving, but that she would be very happy because Juan was going to move back in, and she loved Juan, and so I knew that would be just fine. So the 30 days go by, and we're preparing to leave, and we took all the animals. Now we've got 3 dogs and 2 cats because I had adopted little Mira in the meantime. And so we went to a vet, a younger guy who spoke English beautifully and was familiar with expats coming and going with their pets, and so he wrote out, he gave all of our pets their health certificates, and he knew the proper paperwork to have and everything. So we got that all organized, and then we had learned, and so when we went back, we hired a guy to take us with his truck from Salinas to Guayaquil, which is about an hour and a half or 2-hour drive, with our animals and their crates. And then we had to have another vet at the airport look over all the paperwork. And he said that was all good. And the man who drove us, his name was also Juan, I think, and different guy. And he was this kind of big Germanic guy whose family came from somewhere in Europe, I think. And he was a race car driver, and he was this big, macho, impatient guy. And he was the perfect guy to have there because he was like, you just had the feeling that if that you just didn't want to mess with this guy. So the sweet little Ecuadorian veterinarian, I didn't want to mess with him. So he just very smilingly signed all of our papers and whatever. So we had to stay overnight, but basically we got there in the afternoon. I stayed overnight, but I actually had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the airport. And we learned, and we split up the animals so that I was taking 2 dogs in their crates, and they were going to be in the hold of the airplane. And then I took also one of the cats as well. And then my daughter and grandson stayed for another night at the hotel, and then they came, because one of the big problems with transporting that many animals in the hold is the airlines just did not understand. So we were able to do that. In the meantime, I had contacted the mortgage broker here, and also was recommended a good real estate agent. And so the first week in January, my daughter had found this house that we're living in, and I gave her the amount that I could pay, which was no more than $80,000. And she found this house online. She said, "Mom, what do you think of this?" I said, "I think that's adorable. Let's get somebody to go look at it for us." So we had our real estate agent, whose name was Abby, and lovely lady. I still am in contact with her. Very good real estate agent. And she literally came to the house with her iPhone and walked through the house with us on viewing this from our computer or on our phones, I don't remember which, and walked us through the house and showed us everything and told us all the good points. And I like that it wasn't, the house had an attic, but it had a full staircase, so I knew that I could probably make that into another room, and and put in a bathroom up here. And there was a 2-car garage, and these are old houses built in 1950, and in the neighborhood it's more unusual to have a 2-car garage. Some people have no garage, and in this case there was a 2-car garage, so that was also great. And so I put in an offer on this house, and Kate and Hay were going on a trip to Ayampe to see the sea turtles hatch and go into the ocean. And if I have a picture of those sea turtles or a video, I'm not sure. I'll put that here if I have it. And so as they were leaving, my daughter said to me, "Oh, I'm so nervous. I want to see if we're going to get the house." I said, "No, we're going to get the house. It's just a matter of how much we're going to pay for it." So I bargained with them, and I ended up getting the house for $75,000. This was only 8 years ago, or it'll be 8 years in January, this coming January. So yeah, almost 8 years. And so bouncing back and forth, so we got the house. We have Juan, too, take us to the airport. We get that all handled. I arranged through the limousine service / they also had vans to meet me at the airport with a van, and so I could get the dogs and their crates into the van. And I bought so the limousine driver met me and took me to my son and daughter-in-law's house, where I spent the night. It was actually the 14th of February. And then the next morning, I got up, put the animals into the car, ended up getting stuck in the mud, and had to call AAA. Oh, and I bought a used car for my daughter, my other daughter. And my son had that at his house. So I fly in with the dogs, spend the night, get up in the morning, put everybody into the car, my luggage, try to leave, get stuck in the mud, have to wait for an hour and a half. I'm going to the closing on my house. And then I had to go to the bank and get a cashier's check. And I got stuck in the mud, so I had to call and tell them that I couldn't, that I was going to be late, and I had, whatever. And then they said, no problem. I had to, so I called them and say, okay, I got the cashier's check. So I drive, I sign the papers, I get there, and one of the guys comes out of the office, and he sees, and he goes, "I know it's you because you've got mud all over your car." I said, yeah, it was quite a morning. So I signed the papers, they gave me the keys, and it gave me directions to the house. I didn't have, at that point, I didn't have Google Maps on my phone, so I just got directions, and I made a wrong turn and ended up getting back there, but it was kind of crazy. Then I had one of my son's friends, Ellie, with some other guys, and they were going to meet me and tear all the carpet out of the house, because it had this weird blue carpet and whatever, and beautiful hardwood floors in the house, and I wanted those. So I had them meet me here. I had where the movers where all my stuff was stored here. I had them come the same day. So I had a bunch of guys here ripping the carpet out. So, and getting that done before the movers arrived, so the movers could bring the stuff in and I could direct them to wherever it was going to be. And I got beds set up and made for my daughter and grandson because they were arriving the next day. And so that all went fairly smoothly. There were 2 trucks parked on either side of my driveway, so the moving van couldn't park in my driveway or even next to it. They had to park down the street, which was not fun because they had to carry everything much farther than they should. And then then my daughter and grandson were then going to be arriving later that night. So I got their beds all made and everything so that they would have a place. And I really had to buy a house before I came back, because there's nobody that's going to rent to me with 3 dogs and 2 cats, nor did I want to rent from anybody. I spent, 30 years of my life not being a renter, and I didn't want to go back to that. So that all went by pretty quickly, and there were not that many problems. And that is how we came to be back in the United States again. And we're very grateful for having that experience. I think I've said before, and I always wanted to live in a country that spoke Spanish and learn Spanish better, and it was a tremendous experience. And I'm so happy that we did that. And so that is, I think, the end of the Ecuador series, but I wanted to kind of finish that up, and we'll go on to other things. So have a lovely evening, and God bless.